record here and get started. So welcome everyone. If you are joining in, go ahead and use the chat and you can let us know where you are joining in from. My name is Erin Girard, and we're going to give people just another minute here or so to log in and get situated. Joining me today, we've got two veteran teachers, Kirsten and Janet, and I'll introduce them here in a moment. There is a Q&A function on your Zoom toolbar, and if you have questions, please put your questions in there. If we are not able to get to your questions during our 30 minutes together, please note that those questions will be kept and hopefully answered either with Latanya in the Outschool Teacher Hub or with maybe in one of our newsletters. And we like to see what questions people have. And if we get a lot of the same questions, then maybe we need to have more professional development with that. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. And my name is Erin Girard, and I have been teaching on the site for 2 years and was a parent before that. So my history goes back 2.5 years with Outschool. And then I also now am a full-time staff member with Outschool. And our focus with class quality in the month of October is going to be teaching to a global community. So we have learners in about 200 countries, which is just mind-boggling. And we have teachers from 5 different countries. So there's so much for us to take into consideration as a teacher. So with that, Kirsten, can you introduce yourself and tell us your background with Outschool, and then the same for Janet?
Sure. Hi, my name is Kirsten, and I've been teaching on Outschool about 2.5 years. My kids were homeschooling, and we tried out one class. And at the time, I am a human rights lawyer, and I worked for the UN for a really long time, full time. And then with my kids, it's really hard. I worked in the courtroom, so it's really hard to be in the courtroom and have a call from your kids and have to say to the judge, like, I gotta go. So that doesn't work so well anymore. So I still do contract work with the UN, but then I can choose what I'm doing and a lot of it's from home. And then I turned to teaching human rights for universities at university, and my university employer was in Sweden. My home was in Northern California, so it's going back and forth between and do some logistics of Sweden and Sweden's pay system. I wanted to live more in the United States, and there was just a little bit of a difference of money I would lose if I wasn't living in Sweden. So I thought, oh, maybe I could just make up that little bit of a difference if I, let me just try out some human rights. And then I loved it so much teaching on Outschool. And I love teaching things that I think are super important to younger people who I think should be getting these ideas. And sometimes when you're doing human rights for the UN, it can feel depressing, and Outschool is uplifting. So that's why I came to Outschool and have loved it since I've been here. So that's me. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Kirsten. All right, Janet, how about you?
Oh, I can't follow up, Kirsten. It's amazing listening to her. For me, I came in differently. I'm Janet. I am physician assistant and public health. I taught in brick and mortar before I went for my master's in inner city high school and middle school. Then I went for my master's, I worked, and then I had a daughter. And when she became of school age, we homeschooled a little bit and sent her to school a little bit. Then I found about Outschool on Facebook. Somebody mentioned Outschool. I was like, oh, what is Outschool? I Googled it, I found it. And it was in the middle of me homeschooling her, trying to work and making a curriculum for her. I needed her to learn an extra language. I speak Swahili. I speak 5 languages, but I wanted her to learn Swahili. I was making this curriculum for her as we were going. And I was like, well, she said to me, Mommy, it would be nice if other kids can speak Swahili with me too. And here comes Outschool. So in January 2019, that's when I started teaching on Outschool. My first was the language, Swahili language. I taught it for a little bit. I am still teaching it, and then I branched out to sciences and also African culture and African history and African people. So I've been with Outschool since January 2019.
All right, well, welcome both of you. And we are glad that you are here to share your expertise. And especially as you have seen Outschool grow and more countries and different student populations have been added to our learner demographics. And for those of you who are listening in, if you would like to go ahead and place any questions you have in the Q&A on your Zoom toolbar, please do that and we'll answer as we can. So to begin with, when you think of Outschool and just the vast amount of countries, like we're on almost 200 countries, how do you approach your teaching, your designing of your classes, your classroom management? What are things that we need to consider as teachers working with the learners of Outschool? Janet, would you mind going first?
Sure. So for me, what I do is I have an inbuilt student. That's how I first look at it, whereby if I'm going to teach a subject, I need to pass it through the student in the house. And if it passes her test, then I know I can put it out there. But then the other thing that I look into is being prepared, like planning how the class I'll present the class, making sure the objectives are known up front, both to the student that I'm teaching and to the parent. So there's not that gap of this is what I was expecting to learn, but I really didn't understand it, or I really didn't learn that. And also trying to connect with the student first, because if you connect with them, you're able to explain to them what you want to teach. So in the beginning, I'll ask them, so tell me a little bit about yourself. Why are you taking this class? And some of them will be honest enough to tell me, Mommy signed me up. That's why I'm here. And, you try to find one thing that you can connect with that child, with that student, and then teach them, help them understand the topic, why they're here, what you want to teach them. And also know that we are coming from different cultures. My culture is different from the student who I'm teaching wherever they are located. So there's also that room of I just have to respect your culture and you respect my culture at the same time. So I won't say, or I won't teach on something that I really truly don't understand, because I don't know who is out there and I'll be offending them if I say something wrong. So I'm very particular on what I'm going to teach, especially when it comes to cultures, to make sure that I'm not offending other people out there with what I'm teaching.
All right, thank you very much, Janet. How about you, Kirsten?
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of what Janet's saying. And I know that, I always, I do the same, like, often in my classes when I'm doing introductions, tell me, what brought you to this class, why you're here. And I always say, and it's totally okay with me if it's because my parents said that signed me up and that was it, because that's fair, right? That's why my kids are there sometimes, because they didn't get a choice. So that's what happens. But, yeah, so I agree with a lot of that. And the other thing for me, I think, is that I really try to approach my teaching. I try to teach people how to think, not what to think, right? So so in doing that, just teaching how to think, that's a universal sort of idea. And so many things in my classes are really, they're extremely discussion oriented or project based oriented. So there's a huge amount of interaction. And so giving those really open-ended questions, allowing people to share their experiences and to hear different experiences, and then to be very careful in facilitating that. Oh, that's so interesting that that's your experience and you're coming from this, and here's somebody else coming from this, and really trying to facilitate those discussions with learners so they can respect and understand each other's, where each other is coming from, is really, I think, valuable and opens up their mind and teaches them how to think, not what to think. And so I'm always trying to tell people and parents sometimes, part of the experience, and for myself, trying to remember that part of the experience of being in class is not just the content, but it's being there in class with other people and learning how to hear and respect other people. So that is definitely a rule that I give at the, I have very few rules. I always say I'm from California. I'm very flexible and I want us to have fun in this class, but we have to respect each other and we have to be kind to each other. Those are my main rules in my class: respect and kindness. And from all of that, then I feel like we can have open dialogue and discussion. And
those great for both of you. Thank you very much. And what would you say to our teachers that are here with us with Outschool? What are 1 to 2 tips that you have found that work for you for wanting to create more inclusivity with your diverse learners? Now, this can be diverse in culture, this can be diverse in background, in educational. We're going to talk a little more about homeschool versus traditional here in a moment. But what tips, if you were to think back or think about your classes and how you approach or how you teach or how you research, could you give to the teachers? Kirsten?
Well, I would say one thing for me, I think this is really important to me, and having diversity in my class and making sure that people who are diverse feel very welcome in my class. That to me is really important. And in fact, I had an experience just 2 days ago. I had an experience where, you could feel that there were some differences in the class and then with the students, and you could feel some tension building over the last couple of weeks. And I could see it coming to a head in the chat just a couple days ago. And so I quickly stopped that, turned that and said, we are going to, I see some unkindness happening there. And so we're going to stop and only say kind words right now. And then after class, I addressed it. And I have had to do this sometimes, every once in a while this happens. And when I address it to parents, and I usually address to the whole classroom, because I feel like these are really big learning moments for inclusivity and diversity. And so I write to everyone in the classroom and say, it's really important that we learn how in life, when you get older, you're going to come across people who think differently than you, who come from different backgrounds than you, and who experience life differently than you. And you might really like them and you might not, but you have to learn how to get along with them. This is part of being in a classroom. This is part of your learning experience. It's not just the content of what we're learning here, but it's also this experience right here. So it's really good practice to figure out and find tools to talk kindly to people and to get along with everybody and to try to really listen. I always ask my students, really listen to each other and understand, not just being polite, but really trying to listen and understand where other students are coming from. And another experience is, for example, I have a learner that has to use a board, and he has a communication partner. And so that takes time, right? And that's good for me to learn and the students to learn that sometimes we're gonna have to pause. And that might be frustrating for me because I might have so much content that I need to get through in those 50 minutes. And then I have to remember that that's not as important as teaching people to pause for a moment and let somebody answer a question in the chat if it takes them a little longer, I can manage the time. But this is a really important moment for everyone to learn that everybody's voice is important in the class, right? So those sorts of things are, I think, really important to me. And making sure I have a diverse, inclusive classroom.
Yes, I think that is a great key to being successful on Outschool. So thank you, Kirsten, on that. Janet, how about you?
I like what Kristen is saying very much, and I'm actually learning so much from you too as I listen. I agree with what she's saying, and to add to that is, first, what I try to do is immerse myself in the topic that I'm going to teach on, so that I can see it from both ends or from all the angles that it will come in. And when I'm teaching on a tough class, like I taught about racism in the summer, I will ask my students when they come in and I'll explain to them, you might not agree with everything that will be discussed in this class. Keep an open mind, but just know your point of view, your voice is important. There is no right or wrong answer. I just want to hear from you too. I want you to know that I'm listening and I'm hearing you, and I want you to hear me and all the other students too, and truly listen and hear what they're saying. And sometimes it's not even a tough topic. Might be a student. I have students sometimes who have learning disabilities and they just want to keep raising their hands and answering or asking questions. And you can see the frustration in all the other students rolling their eyes or trying to chat you and tell you things. And it's important to address it and let them know we don't all learn the same way. And also the other student tell them, I will get to you, or I will take extra time when this class is over and everybody logs off. Don't log off. I will answer all your questions until you feel satisfied. I've done that several times. I'll say after class, if you still have questions and I have 10, 15 minutes, I'll stay here, ask me all your questions. If I have the answer, I'll let you know. If I don't have the answer, I'll get back to you when I get the answer. So letting the student feel comfortable that no matter what they say or what they bring to the table, you will listen, you will take time, and they need to reciprocate that to the other students too. It's not just about them. We are all of us here. We are here to learn. It's a process for every single one of us. Even I, the teacher, it's a process for me too, and I'm learning from them too. So that's the approach I take.
And I think you both have great approaches. Thank you both for sharing on that. And you hit on something too with diverse learners. So with that, how do you approach things with your classes like homework, assessment, communication with students, communication with parents? How do you take into consideration that we've been focusing that we're a global community, but we all also are a very diverse community in our learning backgrounds. We have homeschoolers they could be traditional, classical, they could be unschooling, and then we have students that are brick and mortar from private public schools. So there's a lot of diversity within just the types of educational backgrounds, and then you add different cultures. So how do you think about homework? How do you think about assessment or communication? Janet, will you start for us?
So this took me a learning curve to do, and I also I went out there and researched on teaching a global platform. So education in places like Asia and some parts of Europe, it's hardcore. They want that homework, they want that grade, and that's just the point of view they're coming from. To them, that's education. Whereas in the US, they are not so much keen on the homework, but they do want that engagement. They want that project-based learning is what they go for. So when I'm designing my classes, let's say, for example, it's a math class. I will put all three. There's a homework part, there's assessment part. If you want one or all, I give that option to the student or to the parent. So I will email you and say, if you want the exam, there's an exam in this class, but there has to be homework if it's homework. If it's math I'm teaching, I believe in doing homework 5 days a week. Just 5 questions, just to review what you've learned. I'm not going to bog you down with a whole hour of homework and you don't have time for that. For me, what's important is for you to show me that you understood and you can replicate what you learned in your life. It's not just a grade. If you can show in life that what you learned, you can go to the store, buy something, get that change back and calculate and say, hey, I learned how to add and subtract. Now I can go to the store and purchase. And parents out there, please let your kids, when you go to the store shopping with them, let them pay. Let them do the math and get the change back. That's how you get the real life experience and know that they're learning and they're putting what they're learning to work.
Great. Okay, thank you. Kirsten, how about you?
Yeah, similarly, and I know, I was thinking about it for Janet because I know, like, my daughter has taken her Swahili classes, and I know that, like, things like math and language too, that you really have to practice those every day. So I was always telling my daughter, like, you need to practice that. You don't just
Yes.
go to her class once a week and assume you're going to become some fantastic Swahili speaker. This is just not the reality of life, right? So it's different. For my classes, because I generally teach mostly civics classes in the social studies area, right? And so, like Janet, I know that different parents, even within the United States and globally, have different expectations, right, of what they want out of a class, and what they need to get out of that class. And so what I try as hard as I can in all of my classes is to make sure that they have, and I also, to note, I have on the books some one-time classes, but I haven't taught one-time classes in a really long time. I really prefer longer classes just because I really like to get to know my students. So that's my niche. That's what I prefer to do. So this is within that framework of long-term classes where you would sort of want to have some homework in between. But of course, then there's some learners that either have, this is a supplement and they've got their regular classroom every day and they've got a ton of homework coming out of there. So this is not, they don't want to have this extra homework, or they might come from a homeschooling place where they don't want that. That's not what that family is looking for in the class. And then there's others that do need an assessment and do want homework. And so trying to develop a class where I can give that. And so there's, I usually have like a halfway, if I have a 10-week class, I'll have kind of weekly homework, and then I'll have a halfway project and a final project. But that the class is not going to fall apart if people don't do these pieces, that there are things that they can do that will enrich and provide additional learning that kind of concretes the lesson in there. But that if they come to class the next week and they haven't done it, it's not like I'm like, oh no, what do I do for the next hour? I'm in big trouble, right? Because they didn't do this piece of homework. So I try to make it as flexible as possible, and to let the learners know that I provide grades, I provide assessments if they want to turn it in, but that it is not a requirement, that they don't have to feel, I'm never going to make anybody feel badly if they don't do it, or feel like, I don't want students to feel like, shoot, I didn't do that, she's going to think poorly of me, so I don't want to go to class anymore. I'm going to feel uncomfortable participating in class. I don't want I want them to be able, I want to reach them where they are, wherever they are. So try to develop my class to be able to do that and reach them wherever they are.
And I want to point out, thank you both for that. I also want to point out, because we had a couple of comments and questions that came in, not every teacher does homework and not every teacher does assessments. I teach a lot of cooking and baking classes, and my students do have homework because they've got to prep their work. So they have to do some work beforehand, and they have to clean up their work area, and they got to eat. They got to take a taste bite. So, this is not the class where dogs eat the homework. You can't use that excuse. I ate the homework. So you can have some fun with it. I do. But no, some teachers don't do any, and some teachers do. So take that into consideration with what you want to do. The other comment was this particular teacher was teaching just one-time classes. So if you want to, you can teach the multi-day classes. You can do that, or the ongoing, or the flex, but just remember, you get to decide that. So some teachers are more comfortable with just ongoing. Some teachers are more comfortable with just one time. So again, this is your Outschool, teaching business that you are creating. So find what you're comfortable doing, the length of time, and go with that. So just, I wanted to touch base on those questions and comments that came through in here. So let's talk about if you were looking back to yourself, January 2019 for Janet or Kirsten, when you first started, what would you have wanted to know? What do you think you would have wanted to be told or know about teaching on Outschool? Oh, Janet, Janet, go. Okay, Janet, go for it, Janet.
go to Zoom, not Zoom on Outschool, Zoom platform, and learn everything Zoom from the Zoom platform. It will save you time, save you a lot of time on figuring out how to post, how to get classes in, anything Zoom, and it's free. They have all these free webinars where they've recorded them and you can come back and watch them later, or you can register for a live one. So I wish I had known that earlier. Finally, I did it and it helped me a lot. Connect with other teachers. I have 3 amazing teachers. Tammy, the Pokemon teacher, she's amazing. She taught me so much once I connected with her, and she helped me understand the differences between flex and ongoing. I could watch, I could try to read, but until somebody walks you through when they've done it, greatly. She made a difference in my life. Also, teach on what you know. Trust me, it just makes it much, much easier. I will not teach on Alaska, even if I've visited Alaska a couple times. I don't know what happens in Alaska in the winter time, so that won't be me. And then communicate with the students, communicate. Let the parents know what to expect from your class, whether emailing them ahead of time, letting them know, if you miss a class, this is what's gonna happen. Let them know up front what the expectations are. And then the last part for me was class approvals. I know that part, is a little tricky. I learned along the way, because I was frustrated most of the time. I learned, like, if I just write that email and say, I don't understand what you guys are asking me to do, please walk me through step by step. 10 out of 10 times they would write me back. They still do. Last week they wrote me back. They were like, we are asking you to change this, and this. And I said, okay, I changed it. I let them know, and also walked them through the process of why I have created the class the way I have. And 10 out of 10 times, once we have that communication back and forth, I do get my classes approved. So those are my 5 things.
All right. Thank you, Janet. And Kirsten, I know we've got a couple of questions here. I'm going to pass our questions on to LaTanya for one of our Facebook Lives so that we can hear Kirsten before we wrap up here in just a couple of minutes.
All right. Yeah. I mean, to be really honest, that was a hard question for me because I thought I really had I think I can't really think of anything that I would do differently. But what I can say is that when I started, I didn't put so much pressure on myself. I sort of just let it develop organically, right? I sort of just kind of learned as I went, and I didn't get so upset with myself. Sometimes I see teachers and I can see that they're so stressed in the beginning, and I feel for them because I think it's gonna come, and everything's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And so just allowing yourself, and really what Janet said, I think teaching what you love. I think sometimes I see teachers are like, what should we do? What do people want? What do people want? Which is important. It's important to know what the marketplace out there wants, but it's also important to know what you are passionate about, what you're good at, and also know your limits, know your boundaries. So for me, the one thing I would say is, there's been a few times when, because I have a really busy schedule, because this is not the only thing I do, and I homeschool my kids, and I have 2 other jobs, and so it's a busy life, and we travel a lot globally, and so I have kind of boxed times when I can teach, and there have been a few times when I have felt a lot of pressure to teach at a different time, and I've added more classes than I can handle, or done something like that, and I always regret it. And I always think, oh, I'm so stressed. The kids are not getting their best from me anymore. So knowing my boundaries now and sticking to them is really valuable for me.
Both of you, great advice. And I want to also just take some time to say thank you to those of you who have took 30 minutes out of your day to join Kirsten and Janet. You can find out more about their awesome classes on Outschool by going to their profiles. And also I want to just remind you that our class quality team is here to support you. And we do offer one-on-one coaching, and we also offer a variety of different professional development classes, including a one-time professional development class on teaching to a global community. So join my teammate Serena. She offers that twice a week. So please go back to pd.outschool.com. And again, on behalf of Outschool, thank you, Kirsten and Janet, and thank you all our teachers for providing such quality educational opportunities for our students. So thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye.